Welcome to the Lit Chicks podcast. We are Mary Ellen Humphrey.
Hello.
Shannon Reber. And I am Susan Landrigan. We're coming to you today from the Innovation Studio at Lakeshore Center for the Arts in Westfield, New York. Today we're going to talk about how to make our characters seem real.
Be real.
That is a really real.
Be real. Yes.
When you first start writing, at least for me, my characters were like almost like stick people on a page. You know, they were one-dimensional or two-dimensional. So how do you make them three-dimensional and real? You know, so
the trauma.
Trauma, yeah. Well, trauma does make
I
us
put
real.
everybody through trauma.
Okay.
You've read my stuff, you know.
Do your characters have a backstory?
Always, and it's always traumatic.
Yes. And the interesting thing is you don't have to tell your audience, your readers, what that backstory is. If your characters are true to the backstory, it's sort of understood. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So if you meet somebody and you don't know them, what do? You try to get acquainted, right?
Right,
You ask
exactly.
questions.
Ask questions,
you
yes.
ask, where are you from? What do you
Precisely,
do? What's your
yes.
favorite food or whatever? And you start to get to know them. And when you know them well enough, they'll tell you more intimate things like, you know, I'm widowed, or I was married to a bad person, or I quit school at 16, or whatever it is that they have in their life that they're maybe not going to tell everybody.
Right.
So that's the part you got to find out about your characters. The part they wouldn't tell other people. So,
And do you put that in the story?
not necessarily, no.
But it helps
Okay.
you to know them. Once you know them, it makes them easier to make them real.
If it's,
So,
if it's
yeah.
important to the story,
Right,
it
right,
might come
exactly.
out. But what it does is it makes your characters more dimensional. So
Right,
when you're writing
exactly.
their dialogue or their behaviors, do they have idiosyncrasies? Do they have habits? You start to fill them out and color them in on the
Exactly.
page
Yes.
because you now know them. Think about people you know. It's a lot easier to describe somebody that you've known for a long time, right?
Right.
You can say that person, their favorite food is to go out to some special restaurant. They like, reggae music, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Not that I'm talking about me or
No,
anything.
definitely. No.
Or, they're into fancy wines, and so they have this personality where they're reading lots of books, and they go to theaters, and they know the best wines in the world, and so those make your characters real. They can't all be like you.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
I think there's a tendency to sort of pull out one of our multiple personalities in our brain, because we all do have different personalities. When you think about it, we've got the mother, we've got the wife, we've got the daughter, we've got the sister, we've got, grandma,
We've
whatever
but
it is.
psycho. Don't
The
forget, we
psycho.
have the psycho.
We got the ambitious one and the lazy one. There's so many parts to our personalities, so you can pull some of that out. But really, when you're looking at your characters, they need to be complete people. They have faults,
Precisely.
and they have strengths. They have
Exactly.
desires, and they have disappointments. They have to be all the things that real people are.
The first question I always ask a character is how they take their coffee.
Interesting.
I always have to know how they take their
Oh.
coffee, and that it just kind of builds from there. I have to know how they take it, and I have to know if they eat while they're drinking their coffee, or if the coffee is sacred. Coffee is sacred. You can eat later, for me, but that's not the way everybody else does it.
Well, also there's non-traditional characters. So think of Toy Story. They were toys, right?
Yes.
And then
yeah.
there's these creative anime characters, and there's characters that might not be people. Okay, so like I'm working on a character, and I discover things when I'm writing. I discovered that one of my plant people characters likes pop music. And so it was just such a revelation, because that adds a layer of interest to that
exactly.
character.
Yeah.
How does a tree like pop music? Think about that.
Well, I've heard that plants like music.
They do.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
respond to it.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do. Yeah, there's a vibe going on.
I have to say, though, mentioning Toy Story, my favorite line from Toy Story is the Mrs. Potato Head is helping Mr. Potato Head pack the back of his potato, and she says, "You might need your angry eyes, so here they are."
You did that very well. You should be a talkover person.
It amuses me. I can't do dude voices, so it doesn't work out terribly well, but... I haven't seen that movie in so many years, but I remember you might need your angry eyes.
I just I missed that movie. Wow.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. How old can kids be that would like it?
I don't know.
Maybe I could.
It's a Disney movie.
It's a Disney.
Rent
Yeah,
it
but
for my-
yeah.
it came out in the 90s, didn't it? Didn't it come out in the 90s?
I think so. It was a while back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been
So,
told
all
that
ages.
as a fantasy writer, I am supposed to watch How to Train Your Dragon, and I haven't done it. And so I've been told by many people that I need to sit down and watch all 3 How to Train Your Dragon movies.
Well, think about books you've read
Yes.
that have characters that you love or hate, either
Yes,
one.
yeah.
Or even movies.
But you have
know.
to. There
How
has
do
to be
you-
both.
but
You
how-
have to both love and hate your characters, because that makes a character far more compelling. If you can't stand something about this character, but despite that you're still rooting for them,
Yeah, it's a good
I
point.
love that.
Yeah.
I love when writers are good enough to do that, to make you both love and hate the character.
Well, when you look at the characters that you like, what is it that the author did that imbued that character with some traits or some pieces that you really remembered? And sometimes think about they do something, they twist
Right.
their hair, they speak with some sort of language thing going on, they use a certain word. There's different ways that you can think about how an author makes the character real.
Yes, that's true.
And sometimes we just create obstacles because we think that's what we're supposed to do to make the character go through things and all that. That's sort of forcing of stuff. People see through that. So it has to be organic. It has to come naturally. It has to be part of that character development. And you'll know this if your character has their own distinct dialogue, right?
It's true. It's true.
If all your characters in your book have the same voice, the same style of talking, and the same words that they use, and same length of sentences, all that sort of stuff, you got to go back and revisit your characters because
Exactly.
they need to have their own unique voice, which comes out in dialogue and behavior, right?
See, for me, I always have a picture in my head before I start. And for some reason, I don't always interview my characters. I don't always ask them the questions. But I watch, like a movie, what's going on. And I see, okay, so this guy is, they're driving. This guy is clenching the wheel really hard. He's glaring at the road. Oh, okay. All right, yeah. So I'm watching this going on, and you only half describe it because you don't want to give too much away about who he is. But, it tells you more of who he is just because of how he's furiously looking at the road, like it's offended him. And that's something that I really enjoy, is when you take the little nuggets that
Do
tell
you
you
have-
more about
Do you have a favorite character you've written in any of your books? A favorite one?
Shane Murphy.
Okay. And what do you think makes Shane that memorable to you?
The Irish accent that Brandy Balefire did for him.
Oh,
No, he's just he's somebody that I wish was my brother. I want him to be my brother. I want him to be my best friend. And if there was a person out there who was meant to be family for me, that would be Shane Murphy. And
interesting.
yeah,
So in a sense, you've injected a little bit of yourself. You're,
well, what
a little
I
bit,
hope,
yeah.
yeah.
So when I think about, in my book, Nürnberger, I have a young girl, 12-year-old girl, who is the main character. And I composited this character from stories that my mother-in-law told me when she was this little 4'11" French lady, and she adored her father. She had a picture of her father and mother, and she would tell these wonderful stories about when she was a little girl. She'd climb in his lap, and whenever he came home from work, and she'd do all these things, and just absolutely adored him. And then there was my daughter, who had gone off into the Coast Guard Academy, and she was telling me stories about the females on board the sailing ship, the Bark Eagle, and how they and just all these wonderful sailing stories, pulling the yardarms up, and keeping the machine guns trained on the sharks so the kids could swim. All these wonderful stories, right? And so my character is a composite of my mother-in-law as a child, because she had long curly hair, natural curly hair, and my daughter, this courageous young woman going across the sea, and so that is a composite character. But I absolutely loved her because I really did love these people, you know.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
I was able to carry that through to the writing of the story.
That's lovely.
Yeah. So
Well, you're working on one now where you are writing people that you know already.
Yes, yes. I have
So-
not ventured into making up characters yet. But not all of the characters in my book do I really know.
Right.
So-
right. So you are making up
Yeah.
up some of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most of the characters I know,
Yeah.
but so
Will they recognize themselves when they
Oh,
read
they
it?
will.
Yeah. Okay.
well,
So you can't be too insulting.
well, just remember this little point. If somebody says that they recognize themselves in the story and the story isn't flattering, they have to first admit that they did that. And most people won't. So, yeah. Another thing that I've done a few times is to take a photo, a real live picture photo, and I
Yes.
find them usually as old photos.
Ah.
So I have a photo right now of my character Reader, and it's probably taken in the 40s, and this elegant lady, you know, and
Rita.
Rita, yes, and I've always wanted to write a story with Rita, and she was so elegant and so smart and so sophisticated and all this
Right.
stuff, and so I'm pulling that from this photograph. And a good place to find these kinds of characters is look at some of the old class yearbooks, whether it's high school or college. If you look at these people from the 40s and 50s, you know, forget the style, but look at their faces. Look at because back then they were really clean cut and they showed their character through their pictures.
Right.
And you can pick somebody and say, now that young man has this kind of dippy-do thing on his hair, and he looks like he's mischievous, and he's going to be my, you know, Larry or whatever. And then this young woman over here, I love the way she's got this long, sophisticated look about her. I think I'm going to make her my heroine. So you can,
Okay,
and
yeah.
if you have a picture, it kind of reminds
does,
you
yes.
of the character that you've assessed to that person.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It helps to make
That's
them
a
real.
fun way to do
See?
it, especially when you're first starting out and you're not sure.
I still do it.
All right, let's go on to our word for the day.
Perfect.
Ah,
Today's word is ostentatious.
It's a good word.
It means vulgar or pretentious display designed to impress or attract notice.
I like that. That's one of my favorite words. It's very lovely and descriptive. So
And
there
an
we go.
example is that people can buy and display books prominently, display them, but never really read them.
That's true. That is so true.
Just to make them look
I
good.
don't want to be ostentatious, but I do have a lot of books I'm intending to read.
Or sometimes just because they look cool. I swear.
I think there's a big difference between vulgar and pretentious.
That's true.
You know, it's
Very
interesting
true.
that would be the two parts to this word, because vulgar to me is really offensive, but pretentious is kind of putting on airs.
It doesn't need
Yeah.
to be vulgar. Yeah, it can
Yeah.
just
Right.
be
Yeah.
trying to pretend something that you're not.
But it could be an interesting characteristic to add to a character.
Indeed it is.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. That could make them very real.
And it could be a positive or a
Or a
negative,
negative.
right? Because pretentious people can be a good source of joking.
It's
Oh,
true.
look, there she goes again.
Well, thank you for spending time with us today. We value your feedback. We will see you next week.